Lovable scored a 9 out of 10 on full stack deployment, while Claude Design scored a 4, and that gap means picking the wrong tool adds an entire extra implementation step before your app ships. Both tools are shipping new features right now, so I'm running Lovable versus Claude Design across 5 head-to-head tests to find out who actually wins. And the ownership test is still ahead, and it decides whether your $25 a month buys you an app or just a prototype you can't actually take anywhere. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. And every number in this video is traced back to official pricing pages and published docs from both companies. This comparison is built for anyone shipping an MVP or a real product app where the wrong tool choice costs you days. Test 1, Design to Code Handoff. The number that got my attention is that Claude Design's Opus 4.7 vision model runs at 3 times the resolution of what Lovable's community reports, which sounds great, but a high-fidelity design that can't get into production fast is just a pretty picture, so the real question is whether that fidelity holds up once it hits the codebase. Claude Design scores 8.5 on handoff versus Lovable's 7.5, and on design system application it's 8 to 6, because Claude Design auto-applies your design system straight from the codebase with no manual work, while Lovable makes you go through visual edits by hand. And I'll note these scores come from published docs and community reports, not identical prompts run side by side. The gap is real, but the story is more complicated, because Lovable's Git sync pushes clean, standard React and TypeScript that any engineer can take over, and Claude Design's closed loop is only faster if you're staying inside the Claude ecosystem all the way through to Claude Code. So if your team uses a different stack or a different IDE, that seamless handoff disappears pretty fast. Claude Design takes test 1. Lovable's Git sync is the cleaner engineering story for teams outside the Claude ecosystem. But Claude Design's single instruction bundle to Claude Code is just a tighter loop when you're all in, and that puts Claude Design up 1-0 on the board. Test 2. Pricing and credit efficiency. The number that matters here is that Claude Design's Pro plan is $20 a month and Lovable's is $25, and that $5 difference sounds like nothing. But if Claude Design's weekly usage limits are a black box and you blow past them on a Friday sprint, you're suddenly paying API overage rates of $5 per $1 million input tokens with no warning, which is the failure mode worth watching. Lovable scores 8 out of 10 on cost transparency versus Claude Design's 5, because Lovable publishes the credit cost per task at roughly 2 credits per landing page at $25 for 100 Author credits, while Claude Design's weekly limits are unpublished, which makes budgeting genuinely hard. And on raw entry costs, Claude Design scores 7.5 to Lovable's 7. So it's cheaper to get in, but you can't really plan around it. The gap is smaller than it looks on the surface because both tools have hidden cost layers. Lovable has a separate cloud billing layer that scales on its own, and Claude Design has metered usage that kicks in once you hit your weekly allowance, so neither one is fully predictable at scale, and if you're a light user who stays inside the monthly allowance, Claude Design's $20 entry is genuinely the better deal. Pricing is a tie. Lovable's transparency advantage and Claude Design's cheaper entry cancel each other out depending on how you use it, so the score stays at Claude Design 1, Lovable 0, 1 tied. Test 3, Collaboration and Team Workflow. Lovable lets you add unlimited collaborators on every plan, and that word, unlimited, is the one worth paying attention to, because the moment you're working with a designer, a PM, and a developer at the same time, the tool that makes them wait for async comments instead of editing live is costing you real hours every sprint. Lovable scores 8.5 on real-time co-editing versus Claude Design's 5.5, with live multiplayer editing across 4 role levels: viewer, editor, admin, and owner, while Claude Design is async comments only with just 3 access modes. Though what surprised me is that Claude Design does have one standout feature here: a group chat where your whole team can talk to Claude inside the design conversation, which Lovable has nothing like. Lovable takes test 3. I thought Claude Design's group AI chat would be a bigger differentiator, but live multiplayer editing with real role controls is just more useful day to day for a shipping team, and that ties the series at 1 each with 1 test tied. Alright, so we're tied right now, And the ownership and speed tests are still coming, where ownership decides whether the code you build is actually yours to take anywhere. And speed decides whether that 9 out of 10 full stack score from the hook is real or just a marketing number. And those two tests could flip this whole thing. Test 4. Ownership and control. The failure mode here is concrete. Claude Design is a research preview with no data residency and no audit logs. So if you build a product on it and Anthropic changes the terms or sunsets the preview, what you get back is a zip file of design exports, not a working code base. And for any team with a compliance requirement or a need to self-host, that's not a minor inconvenience. Lovable scores 9 on code ownership versus Claude Design's 4, and on self-hosting it's 8.5 to 2, which are the biggest deltas in this whole comparison. Because Lovable gives you full Git sync, standard Vite and React, and you can deploy to AWS, GCP, or Azure anytime, while Claude Design exports design artifacts only with no production code, and self-hosting not supported in the current preview. Lovable wins test 4, and it's not close. Honestly, given the quality scores Claude Design posted earlier, I figured it would at least export production-ready code, but it exports design artifacts only, which is a hard stop for any team that needs to own their stack. So Lovable leads now, 2-1 with 1 tied. Test 5. Speed to deployable app. The number here is the one from the hook. Lovable scored 9 out of 10 on full stack generation. Claude Design scored 4, and that's the gap between a tool that ships React plus Supabase plus auth in minutes and a tool that hands you a prototype and says good luck getting it into production. Lovable scores 9 on full stack generation, 8.5 on deployment speed, and 8 on MVP iteration loop, while Claude Design scores 4, 5, and 7, respectively. And what I looked at carefully is that iteration loop score, because Claude Design's 7 there is actually solid since its conversation-based design loop is fast for pure UI work. But the gap is in the backend because Lovable includes Supabase and auth out of the box, and Claude Design does not. Now the caveat is real. If you're design first and your workflow ends at a handoff to a developer who will build the backend anyway, Claude Design's prototype speed is actually fine because the 9 versus 4 gap only matters if you need a working deployed app at the end of the session. And if you're handing off to an engineer regardless, that delta shrinks a lot. Lovable takes test 5. It gets you from idea to deployed app in one tool with no handoff step and no extra implementation layer. And that's the decisive difference. So the final score is Lovable 3, Claude Design 1, 1 tied, and Lovable wins the series. So where does Lovable clearly win? Full stack speed, React, Supabase, and auth deployed in minutes with no handoff. Ownership, full Git sync, self-host on any cloud, 0 lock-in. Collaboration, real-time multiplayer with 4 role levels versus async comments only. And cost transparency, Lovable publishes the credit math per task at roughly 2 credits per landing page so you can actually budget. Claude Design wins on the design to code loop. Same ecosystem, single instruction handoff to Claude code, no translation step, and it auto-applies your design system from the codebase itself, plus the group AI chat where your whole team talks to Claude inside the design conversation, is a genuinely unique feature. And the entry price is $20 a month versus Lovable's $25. Okay, so I'll be straight with you. The design fidelity gap matters less than you'd think, and the 9 versus 4 deployment score is what actually decides this. So if you need to ship a real app, pick Lovable, and if you're design first and already in the Claude ecosystem. Claude Design is the safer pick because the downside of choosing wrong is an extra implementation step you didn't plan for. 9 out of 10 for shipping, 4 for designing. If you're still figuring out the code side of your stack, I put Windsurf and Cursor through real workflows head-to-head, and the results are pretty interesting if you're trying to pick an AI coding environment to pair with whichever builder you just chose.